Just a quick overview of assistive technology in Montgomery County as we enter and are in virtual learning. I'm going to frame it by saying that we are very committed to purchasing tools with accessibility features just built in. Whether we're in school buildings or in virtual learning, we're very attentive to accessibility whenever we look for new tools to support our students. We have purchased some extra items and tools during virtual learning, and today we're going to give you a broad overview of some of the options that are available to our students with IEPs or 504 plans. Now, moving along, I did want to let you know that we're going to have a series of 3 presentations over the next few weeks. This first one is going to just, as I say, give you a broad look, a broad overview of tools. And then on November 19th, next week, we will be taking a deeper dive into tools that are really assistive technology tools that are targeted to support students who struggle with reading. So that'll be very much a reading focus on November 19th. And then a couple of weeks later, we will be coming back on December 3rd and taking a deep look into the tools that are going to be supporting your students with writing. So if one of those areas is a focus for you, please plan on coming back at that time, but we are delighted to move forward and just give you, again, a brief overview tonight. So we have 2 terms that you may have heard you know, when we're in schools and also more so when we're in virtual learning. And the terms are instructional technology and assistive technology. And I wanted to be sure to, first of all, put the definitions out there so that we have a sort of the groundwork of what they are. So instructional technology is general. It's the process of using technology for learning. And as everybody knows, and I'm sure you've written in the chat, we're using more and more technology now that we're in virtual learning. So any technology your student uses could be termed instructional technology. Now, when does it become assistive technology? So the definition says it's any item, piece of equipment, or software program or product system that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of persons with disabilities. And essentially, what that means is if a student needs to use that piece of technology to access the curriculum, and if they didn't have that technology, they wouldn't be able to access, show their knowledge, learn in the same way. It then becomes assistive technology for them. So I'm going to go to the next slide, which really sort of says the same thing, but it says it in a more visual format. So, for example, instructional technology on the left. If a teacher was offering a word processor or keyboarding as an option for a student, and they were, if that was taken away, they were able to handwrite and show their knowledge in a similar way, handwriting was not a barrier, keyboarding is a nice option, then that, for that student, keyboarding or a word processor would be instructional technology. If, on the other hand, the student had a barrier, perhaps a motor challenge, that rendered them not really able to show their knowledge through handwriting, but they were able to type and use a word processor and display their knowledge that way, then that piece of technology, a word processor, keyboard, would become assistive technology for that student. And in that case, we would likely see it written in the IEP so that it was sort of guaranteed that the student would have access to that as assistive technology when writing. And just to frame the piece in the middle, universal design for learning is a concept that comes from universal design for living. So we all know that there are automatic doors, there's wider doors, there's curb cuts that were targeted or designed for people with disabilities in wheelchairs, but come to find out, they benefit a lot of people with strollers, people on bicycles. And so teachers are designing their lessons largely with this concept in mind so that offering choices for everybody, for example, you can keyboard or write, means that the lesson is designed to meet all learners' needs. So the students who need it as assistive technology look very similar to the students who choose to use it as opposed to need to use it. So moving along. So again, this session will provide you an overview of the tools and subscriptions we've purchased for our students during distance learning with 504 plans and IEPs, and also, as Alice spoke to, provide you an opportunity to pose questions that we will answer before the end of the presentation. And as we move through the next slides, we will be showing you, demonstrating, and having screenshots of specific tools that we have purchased and are available for your students. And we're hoping that as you view these tools, you just think about your own student and think about how or if these tools match your student and their needs at this moment. So now I'm going to go to the next slide and throw it over to Alice to talk about Chromebooks.
So as many of you know, every student in MCPS has a Chromebook. Can you go to the next slide for me, please? And all MCPS Chromebooks all students have that available to them. There are two versions that a student could have, a touch Chromebook or a non-touch Chromebook, for primarily if your student is an elementary school student or you're in some special education programs, specific programs, you may have gotten a touch Chromebook. If you're in the secondary level, you probably got a non-touch Chromebook. But the accessibility features in the Chromebooks are the same, regardless of whether you got a touch Chromebook or a non-touch Chromebook for your student. Can you change the slide for me, please? So one of the things that I wanted to point out to make sure everybody knows how to do is to turn the accessibility section of your Chromebook on. And to do that, you go into the settings, you go to advanced, and you go to accessibility. And I am going to share my screen right now just to show how that works. And so Etna, you can stop sharing yours and I will go and share mine. And I just want to demonstrate where you go to be able to turn these features on. So this is my screen in my homebook. And if you navigate down to your system tray to where the time is and you click there, you get to go to your settings. Right now, I already have it turned on, but I'm going to show you how you can turn it on. You click on settings, you go to advanced, and you scroll down until you see the word accessibility. And to see it in your system tray, just like I see mine in the system tray right here, you need to make sure that it's toggled on, not off. So right now I've turned it off and now you don't see it. When I turn it back on, now you see it. And so that gives the student the ability to turn on the features they need at any point in time while they're using the Chromebook. The other thing you're able to do is go ahead and make some settings changes in your Chromebook. So when I click on Manage Accessibility Features, I'm able to come in here and make some settings changes if I wanted to. If there were some things that I want to turn on their own, I can go ahead and do that and turn those features on. If I don't, I can just use the system tray right here. We have features that deal with text-to-speech, which Etna was talking about. We'll talk a little bit more about those at our next session where we talk about reading tools. We have display features here. And if you have a student who is struggling to see, visually see, you can turn on the magnifier or the docked magnifier here, where the student would be able to use that to be able to see their text a little bit better. You can also go into the display device settings and make your whole screen larger. So right now I have mine, because I wear glasses, I have mine a little bit larger than most people do, but you can make it larger and change it, or you can make it smaller if somebody needs it smaller. You can make it smaller, and now my screen is a little bit, the resolution is smaller. I can keep it at the 100%. That is what most screens should look like. Or I can make it bigger like I like it so that I'm able to do that. If you're someone who reads at night, you can also turn the night light on and it changes how it visually see it on the page. So just wanted to show you some of those features that you can do to customize your Chromebook to fit your students' individual needs. You can also make some changes to the keyboard. So you can come here and you can see how things can be highlighted based on where you are in the keyboard. You can also turn on the on-screen keyboard, and this feature is particularly good for those students who have the touch screen, and we'll talk a little bit more that you can tent your Chromebook and you would be able to use the on-screen keyboard with your fingers to type. So that's a feature you can turn on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at our next session. You also have the option to make your mouse larger. So your cursor now looks a little bit larger. And for those who have a hard time seeing, that can also be helpful. And the other feature you're able to do is change the color. So you can change it to green, or maybe you like magenta. So now it's bigger and I have a different color, and I may be able to easily see my Chromebook, where I am in the Chromebook. I don't need it bigger, so I'm not gonna have it that, but I think I'll leave it as magenta. The last thing that I wanna show you is that you have the ability, if you're someone who uses closed captions, to change how you see your closed captions. You can make the text bigger, so I can go larger, and you can see it right here to be able to decide if that's how you like to see it. And you can also change the color. And make it look a little bit different. And you can change the font. So you can customize these features for your students based on what they may need to make this Chromebook work a little bit better for them. I'm going to close out of here and come down to the system tray. So remember earlier, I showed you how I can put the accessibility features right here on my system tray. If there's a feature that I want to turn on and off, I can come to the system tray, turn on accessibility, and click on a feature that I would like. So maybe I want to use the docked modifier for what I'm doing. So now you can see that wherever my mouse is on the top part of my screen, I have it now magnified a little bit larger for me to see what I'm navigating on the screen. So that's a feature that some students may need. I don't know about you, but I had a child who lost his glasses a lot of the time. And sometimes that feature may have come in handy when we're waiting to get his new pair of glasses. If I didn't want my large mouse cursor to show up anymore, I can just come right here and turn it off. So when you see a green check mark, it's on. And when you don't see a check mark, it's off. So those are some of the accessibility features that are built into your Chromebook for your student to use and may be helpful to them to customize to make their Chromebook more accessible.
Okay.
Edna, I've come back, and do we want to just talk a little bit about the fact that if you have a touch Chromebook, can you share the screen? I'm sorry,
Certainly.
presentation
Yeah.
for me again, and go to slide 23. So if your student happens to have a touch Chromebook, you're able to have the flexibility of 4 different modes. You can tent it. like that. You can have it totally flat, so it looks just like a tablet and use it like a tablet. You can have it just like this. So if they're watching their Zoom lesson and this is bigger and better for them, they can have it in that form, or they can have it just in the regular format like every other one. So you have all those different views, and the touchscreen one, if you had it in the tent or the tablet mode, that's when the on-screen keyboard would be very useful for your student to be able to type on the screen. And that's the accessibility features for your Chromebook that you have.
Next slide.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to pick it up from here and talk a little bit about a specific tool that MCPS has purchased for all students grades 1 through 12 who are ESOL students, and for students with an IEP or 504 plan. And it's called the Read and Write for Google Toolbar. It provides many, many supports. And just to let you know, if your student is in one of those groups, they should automatically have it on their toolbar. It sort of automatically appears when they are designated one of those categories. It provides, like I said, many, many supports. And as you'll see, they're written down here. So there's a lot of them and it's small. So don't worry too much about, remembering or knowing all of these. We will go over some tonight, more general tools, but we're saving the ones that directly target reading and writing for our next presentations. And so again, I'm going to go over some of the more general tools, but when you see it on your students' extensions toolbar, you can trigger it on and off, and it looks like this when they're using it, and it works in Google Docs and on the web. So the next slide, I'm going to show you how some of the general studies tools work. So we're going to go over the dictionary, the picture dictionary, the masking tool, and the highlighting tool. And I have an article that I'm going to link into. I also have some screenshots. So hopefully the article will work and we'll be in good shape. Okay. So here we go. It's loading a little bit, and there is my toolbar. Now I'm going to move this, it's blocking. I can put it out of the way, can hide it, and it looks like this in my Google Docs. So I can trigger it to come down, or I can hide it if I don't want it there in the moment. So I've triggered it to come down, and I'm going to show you again some of the general tools. So if there's a word that I'm not quite sure of, and it would really help me to understand the meaning of the article, I have a built-in dictionary. I have two kinds of dictionary. So I'm going to show you, I can click on the word occasionally, highlight it, and go up here, and I have a picture dictionary, and it will give me a visual image of what that word means. And that's really helpful for some of our students, particularly those that do well with visuals for comprehension. So that's one way of getting my word defined through a picture. And then I can go through and find a text-based definition of the word. And we will be reviewing text-to-speech later, but I do want to let you know that if this is a challenge for me to read, I can trigger text-to-speech and it will read it.
Sometimes, but not very often.
So that is the two dictionary features right in the document. There's no visual breaks. You don't have to go out to dictionary.com. And so it's sort of an easy way to quickly get the meaning of a word that will hopefully support your comprehension. The next tool I was going to show you is the masking tool. And this is the masking tool here. I'm going to talk about it a little because as soon as I turn it on, you'll see what happens. It gives your student a narrower reading bar so that they can scroll through the document or the article, paying a little more attention to the line they're reading in the moment. So I'm going to trigger it on, and there you see it's sort of blackened out a lot of my screen, or it just sort of makes it less visually cluttered for me. I can come down slowly, And this works really well for some students. We have also had paper versions of this in the past, but this is a digital version built right in the toolbar. And I want to show you, there are a lot of options to this. So I'm going to go over to the options, which is tricky because the background is dark, but I'm going to click on the options, and you can see I can change my background color depending on your student's preference or what works better for him. So I can go into, let me pick purple. So it can be that color. And I can also change the reading light color to, let's say, yellow. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. I'm going to go back to my white and black. You can also change the background opacity, so I can make it lighter or darker. I can do the same with my reading light, lighter or darker. And I can also change how narrow or wide my reading bar is going to be. So lots of flexibility in that screen masking tool. And again, can be very helpful for students that might be distracted by a lot of text on the screen or need to chunk it a little bit to get through the reading task. So I'm going to now go and turn off. And just so you know, if it's a purple underline, it means that that particular feature has been turned on or is triggered. So I'm going to get out of this now. Cancel. And turn it off. Okay. So the next general feature we're going to look at tonight is the highlighting tool. And that is really helpful for students when they are required to note take for whatever reason, to memorize or to perhaps create some kind of written product later to demonstrate their knowledge. And so I'm going to just pretend I'm looking for document or words in here that relate to plot and setting. So as I'm reading, I'm saying, oh, this is not going to be accurate, but I'm just going to, for demonstration purposes, assume that this sentence is going to illustrate the plot. So I'm going to highlight it first with my cursor and select blue. So I'm going to have my plot parts of this text highlighted in blue. So I'll just go and get a couple so that we can, for demonstration purposes. And then setting. The setting, I'm going to select pink for my setting. So I'm going to come down and get some more text and assume that that's a setting part of my document, and one more. And then just for demonstration purposes, there might be a time when you're not sure, you think this might be something valuable and it doesn't really resonate as plot or setting, but I think I need it. So I'm going to go and select green for that. And you can keep going. So I've now read my document. I've highlighted the way I think it makes sense for me and what the requirement was from my teacher. And now I'm going to go to this icon and collect my highlights. And it asks me, which ones do you want to collect? Now, I don't happen to have any that are yellow, but I'm going to leave it checked anyway. So I'm going to leave it and select all of them. And what it does is it creates a new document with your highlights in the order designated by color. So what I would tend to do is, because I might not remember that blue was plot, I would go in and write plot, and then pink was setting. I could spell that right. So just a really nice, succinct way to note take for your students. And just to let you know, it does create a link back to your original document where you got your notes from. So back to our presentation. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide, and just to let you know, these are just some screenshots and they're in the presentation that illustrate the same features that I walked through in the demonstration. So there we have our picture dictionary on the left and our text-based dictionary on the right. We have the masking tool, and lastly, we have on the left-hand side the document that you were doing your note-taking from, and on the right-hand side, the notes that you have collated from within your document. And I'm going to throw it back to Alice to chat about Cami.
So Cami is another tool that MCPS bought. They bought it whole county, but it does have some accessibility features built in. So Cami is a piece of software that students can use to be able to access PDF files. So for some of our curriculums, they're in PDF files, and students are able to write on top of it and annotate on top of it. One of the features that I want to point out today is, yes, it also does have a dictionary feature in here, so a student can use the dictionary. It has an equation editor, so students are able to type in their math. You're also able to do freehand drawing and use custom shapes. So students who may have difficulty drawing by hand have some shapes here that they could put on the page, and that would help them to be able to draw some objects that they may need. There is a text box that they're able to use to type, and we'll talk a little bit more about the fact that it also has speech to text built into it in our third session. But I wanted to point out that it does have some of the same accessibility features in here that we just mentioned from the Read and Write toolbar, like having the ability to have a dictionary, having the ability to have something read to you, being able to typing it if you just like you would if you were on a Google Doc, and also being able to draw. Go ahead and change to the next slide.
Sure.
Oh.
So, go ahead, Alice.
No, go ahead.
So we did not create a live poll for this question, but we did want to, if you can throw in the chat, if your child is using Nearpod, or you're aware that they're using Nearpod, or you're wondering what Nearpod is, go ahead and enter that in the chat. We're going to talk about it in a minute while you're chatting. It is another tool that MCPS has purchased, and it's specifically purchased to encourage engagement. It is an engagement tool because it enables teachers to deliver lessons that have engagement pieces sort of built in throughout the presentation, which is a little bit different than when you're sitting listening to a presentation from start to finish. If every 3 or 4 slides or so, there's a piece that you need to do something for, be it answer a question, engage in a poll. It sort of is a different experience of receiving content. And so this is, again, just a definition of what Nearpod is. It's available to all MCPS teachers, an engagement tool. It enables them to make their Google Slide presentations interactive and integrates beautifully with My MCPS Classroom. So some of the features that it includes are virtual reality, polls, collaborate boards, and game-based quizzes. And I know many teachers are finding it very useful, and I believe many students are finding it helpful and liking their lessons to be delivered in this format. So, if you're wondering what Nearpod is, you can ask your students. Many of them will have used it. Okay. And this is just an example of one of the features in Nearpod. So the teacher can put up a collaborate board, and students can enter their answers in the board as just a collaborative presentation. And the teacher can also elect to make their comments anonymous, which sometimes is helpful for students who might be a little reticent about, even engaging in something that will be shared for the whole class, but the names don't have to be visible. So it's a good way for teachers to get input from students, and even sometimes a check for understanding, how are we doing? Do we need to review? Do we need to go over, or we're rock and solid on this concept?
So,
go ahead.
Since we have a little bit of time, I was going to just share my screen and just show them an example of what a Nearpod would look like.
Lovely.
All right, let me share my screen. So usually your student would get a Nearpod link or a code, and they'll be invited to join the lesson. And so this is a mathematics lesson that I just found really quickly. And the student has the option to click through the lesson if it's designed to be a self-paced lesson. But if the teacher is doing it live, then usually the teacher is controlling the pace of the lesson. Students do have the option to be able to save any notes they would like to make on their Google Drive if they wanted to. They would just have to access that they wanted to by clicking on Save to Google Drive. And they can make notes along the way, especially if it's a self-paced lesson. And they can click through the slides, and a teacher may have an activity here and then a slide where the student would have to interact with it. I'm just going to find one that has some interactivity. Where I can go in and plot my points. So the teacher had this tool embedded into it, and I could go in and plot my points to be able to demonstrate that. So, oh, hold on. I always hate this. Can't move it. Can't see my slide anymore. There we go. And the student can just move through, do the next piece of the activity. This one is also another one that the teacher has embedded some kind of activity, and they can draw or do something with it. And so it's just a way for students to be able to interact when the teacher is doing it. They may have a collaboration board. They may have a poll embedded in the Nearpod. They may have different types of interactivities built into the Nearpod for the student. And so this one is a high school level one, I believe, but you can see the way it could be designed.
And if a teacher is using it live in the classroom, the teacher sees the students' products in real time. They can see it on their account, so they can provide feedback in real time also. And I'm just, yeah, I'll share my screen again just because we have the Q&A final slide on there. So if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we will try to answer everything before we close out tonight. So let's see. Okay. So some people talk that their child is using Nearpod, and I think that demonstration is probably helpful to have them understand a little bit better what it is. Any other questions?
I have a question that came just to me.
Okay.
How can we support our student at home if they have dyslexia or spelling challenges and therefore are hesitant to type in the chat?
Okay, that's a good question, and we will delve more into writing supports in our third section, but I would suggest, if possible, that they type in a Google Doc first and use some of the spelling supports built right into the Google Doc if they can, and then cut and paste their comment into the chat. There's traditional spell check in Google Docs, and you'll see on our December 3rd presentation, there's also word prediction on the toolbar. So if spelling is a challenge, it will predict what they're going to write. And there's also speech to text, which we will again explore on December 3rd. If they mute themselves, they can speech to text into a Google Doc and then cut and paste it into the chat. Alice and Linda, you may have some more ideas, but they're just a few thoughts to answer the question.
Well, I was thinking back to your slides at the very beginning when you talked about the concept of universal design for learning. And if that challenge is stopping a student from participating the way all the other kids are in class, it might be worth letting your child's teacher know, because you just saw with that demonstration of Nearpod that there are lots of other ways to engage in live instruction over Zoom. And certainly kids who have challenges with reading and writing, the chat feature is not going to be the best feature for them to engage in a lesson. And so you might give that feedback to your child's teacher, or ask your child if they feel comfortable speaking up instead of chatting, or asking the teacher, advocating for themselves to ask the teacher for other opportunities to engage in the lesson.